Namaste, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our class today. So we're going to learn something really interesting. Basically, the secrets of life itself. We're going to look at all the essential things that keep every living thing, from a tiny little ant all the way up to you and me, alive and kicking. So are you ready? Let's get started. Okay, so here's our plan for today's session. First up, we'll figure out what actually makes something alive. After that, we'll dive into 4 super important life processes, taking them one by one. And of course, at the end, just before the bell rings, we'll do a quick revision of everything. Don't worry, it's going to be very simple, I promise. All right, to get our brains working, I want you to think about a really simple question. Just look at the slide. What's the real difference between your pet dog and, say, a pet rock? I mean, we all know the dog is alive and the rock isn't, right? But have you ever stopped to wonder why? What's the actual scientific reason? Let's find out together. Okay, so let's start with our first topic for the day. We're going to get down to the basics. What is a living being? Well, the answer is actually quite simple, children. A living being is basically any organism that can carry out these special activities we call life processes. Now, please make a note of this. It's these jobs that non-living things like that pet rock we were talking about just can't do. Okay, now take a close look at this slide. Think of it as a checklist for life, you know? Let's quickly run through it. Living things, well, they grow, just like all of you are growing taller every single year. They respire, which means they breathe to get energy. They need food, what we call nutrition. They respond to things around them, you know, like when you accidentally touch a hot towel and pull your hand back immediately. That's a response. And finally, they excrete waste to keep their bodies clean. These are some of the biggest signs of life. Excellent! Now, let's move on to our very first life process. And a simple way to think about it is this. A car needs petrol to run, right? In the same way, all living things need food for energy. And this whole process of getting and using food, that's what we call nutrition. Now, it's really important to get this. Nutrition isn't just about eating. It's much more than that. It's the entire process of taking that food in and then using it for energy, for growing bigger, and even for repairing our bodies. You know, like when you get a small cut and after a few days it heals all by itself, that's nutrition at work. Okay, now this is interesting. Pay close attention. Not every living thing gets its food in the same way. Think about the tulsi plant you might have at home. It's like its own little chef. It makes its own food just using sunlight. This amazing process is called autotrophic nutrition. Auto just means self. But what about us? Can we stand in the sun and make our own food? No way. We eat things like dal chawal, or maybe some chicken. That means we depend on plants and other animals for our food, and this is called heterotrophic nutrition. Now, children, these 2 words, autotrophic and heterotrophic, are very important for your exams, so make sure you remember them. Brilliant. So we've got the food inside the body, but what's next? The big question is, how do we actually get the energy out of that food? Well, that brings us perfectly to our second life process, respiration. Now listen carefully, because this is where a lot of students get confused. Respiration is not the same as breathing. Please remember that. Breathing is just the physical act of taking air in and pushing it out. Respiration, that's the chemical magic that happens deep inside our body's cells, where the food is actually broken down to release all that useful energy. Just look at this slide here. It shows you the simple formula for making energy. See? Our body takes the food we ate, combines it with the oxygen we breathe in, and poof, this chemical reaction releases the energy we need to do everything. And what's left over? Well, we get carbon dioxide, which we then breathe out, and a little bit of water. It's almost like having a tiny little power plant working inside every single one of your cells. All right, so we've made the energy. Fantastic, but how does that energy and the oxygen get to every single part of our body? I mean, from the top of your head all the way down to the tips of your toes. Well, for that, we need a delivery system. And this brings us to our third life process, which is called transport. The easiest way to imagine this is to think of the transport system as the body's own personal courier service, like a Swiggy or a Zomato for your cells. Its main job is to pick up all the essential stuff, like food and oxygen, and deliver it to every single cell that needs it. Now, this delivery system looks a bit different in plants and humans. In our bodies, we have what's called the circulatory system. That's our heart, our blood, and all the blood vessels. It's just like a big city's road network, with blood acting as the delivery trucks. But in plants, they have two special pipes you need to remember. First is the xylem, which is like a straw that pulls water up from the roots. And the second is the phloem, which carries the food made in the leaves down to the rest of the plant. Okay, we're on to our last but definitely not least life process for today. So after all this work, making energy, using it, our body ends up producing some waste. And it is absolutely crucial that we get rid of this waste. This process of throwing out the trash is called excretion. The definition, as you can see, is very, very simple. Excretion is just the removal of waste materials from the body, plain and simple. It's the body's way of keeping itself clean and healthy from the inside. And here's a perfect way to think about it. Every single day, your family takes out the kachra, the trash, from your house, right? What would happen if you didn't? The house would get all dirty and it wouldn't be healthy. Well, it's the exact same thing with our bodies. Excretion is our body's way of taking out its own kachra so that everything keeps working just right. Fantastic work, everyone. We've made it through the 4 main life processes. So, just like we always do in class, let's do a quick revision of all the key points before we wrap up for the day. Okay, so let's summarize. The number one thing to remember is that all living things perform these life processes. What were the big 4 we talked about? We had nutrition, which is all about getting food, respiration, which is about making energy from that food, transport for moving everything around, and excretion for getting rid of waste. And don't forget, plants are the autotrophs who make their own food, and animals are the heterotrophs who don't. Every single one of these processes is absolutely essential for survival. And before you go, I have a little bit of homework for you. It's a thinking question. The next time you sit down to eat your lunch, I want you to just pause for a second and think, how are all 4 of these processes, nutrition, respiration, transport, and excretion, working together right at that moment? It's a pretty cool thing to think about. Thank you so much for your attention today. Study well, and I'll see you all in the next class.
आज के बिजनेस वर्ल्ड में सिर्फ दिखना काफी नहीं, आपकी पहचान सुनाई भी देनी चाहिए। हर सर्विस की एक कहानी होती है, हर ब्रांड की एक आवाज होती है।
रविकांत आपके ब्रांड को देगा म्यूजिकल पहचान।
अपने ब्रांड को आवाज दो, हर दिल तक एहसास दो। हर ब्रांड बनता है विजन से, हर पहचान बनती है इमोशन से। अब मार्केटिंग नहीं, ब्रांड एक्सपीरियंस बनाइए। रविकांत के साथ आपकी सर्विस सिर्फ दिखेगी नहीं, महसूस भी होगी। नाम आपका, आवाज हमारी, पहचान बनेगी सबसे अलग आपकी। आज हम सिर्फ सर्विस नहीं देते, हम ब्रांड की पहचान बनाते हैं। वो विजन को आवाज मिलती है जब ब्रांड म्यूजिक से जुड़ता है। रविकांत के साथ हर कैंपेन मार्केट में अलग दिखता है। आज के समय में सिर्फ रिज्यूमे बनाना काफी नहीं है, जरूरी है कि लोग आपको समझें, आपकी स्किल्स को जानें और आपकी कहानी सुने। आज सोशल मीडिया पर जो दिखता है वही बिकता है, इसीलिए हम लाए हैं रिज्यूम एक्सप्लेनेशन वीडियो सर्विस, जहां आपका रिज्यूम ये प्रोफेशनल तरीके से ये आसान भाषा में समझाया जाता है। दिखावे से बनती है आपकी करियर रेपुटेशन और मजबूत होती है आपकी सोशल रेपुटेशन। जब आप अपना रिज्यूम वीडियो सोशल मीडिया पर शेयर करते हैं तो लोग आपको सिर्फ नाम से नहीं, आपकी काबिलियत से पहचानते हैं। क्योंकि आपकी पहचान मायने रखती है। क्योंकि आपकी पहचान मायने रखती है।